Oh, this is gonna be crazy. That was great.
Alright, so hello everyone and welcome today to a special episode of SpraynPray1000's Verdict. I am SpraynPray1000 and today I'm going to talk about, and let me actually mute that because that's actually a distraction for me. Today I'm going to talk about a game that I waited a long time for, about 2 years. A lot of people hyped it up. It was supposed to be a very, very big game, and a lot of people were excited for it. Today I'm going to talk about Watch Dogs, which is an open-world sandbox game made by Ubisoft Montreal for the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, the Xbox 360, PS3, and the PC, with the Wii U version being delayed till later this year. So, what exactly is Watch Dogs? Watch Dogs is, as I said, an open-world sandbox game. You play as Aiden Pierce in Chicago, and you spend most of your time running around Chicago, doing various missions, the typical sandbox type of formula. However, this game has a very heavy emphasis on hacking and manipulating connected city infrastructure and using it to your advantage on various missions, quests, or just moving around the city. In this universe, the Watch Dogs universe, which is actually kind of based off of the real world universe, Chicago has been completely integrated into this system known as CTOS or CTOS, and basically all infrastructure, basically any kind of electronic component of the city is linked to this massive network. The whole city is completely outfitted with this cyber electronic network that spans all over the place. And as Aiden Pierce, you have the ability to hack into all these different things and objects and manipulate them. So, for example, if there's a crane, you can hack into the crane to make it drop its loot from far away. Or you could be driving, and if people are chasing you, you can hack into a bunch of blockers, have them come out of the ground, and completely decimate any vehicles behind you. You can screw with traffic lights. You can use, what are they called? Scissor lifts to get up to high places. You can hack into cameras to follow people without actually physically following them. You can do a whole bunch of crazy stuff, and a lot of it is actually pretty interesting the way they make it go into it. And it's a pretty core element of the game. In fact, that's basically what separates Watch Dogs from 90% of these other sandbox games just right off the bat. Now, because Chicago is so open, it's actually pretty refreshing to see that, at least on PS4, that it loads relatively quickly. All the things that you might see are good to go right from the beginning. So if there's a camera, that's it. You can just hop right into the camera. It's seamless. There's basically no loading there. And the gunplay, which is basically another major asset of Watch Dogs, is pretty smooth, pretty easy. For example, in this game you have focus. If you need to slow down time, the typical Max Payne type of bullet time, which can also be used while driving. And additionally, you can also hack while in focus, which is very helpful, especially while driving. If you're going 60 to 100, you really don't have time to do it without slowing down time. You can turn around the camera, get a look around, disable something or make something blow up and potentially shake your pursuers. So for the most part, the gameplay of Watch Dogs is all right. Now, there are some negatives about the gameplay that I want to talk about. And a lot of these, while they're not game crippling, I definitely think that if they were fixed or rectified, the game would have been better. So in this game, unfortunately, you can't switch your aiming shoulder, which is actually very weird. Most Ubisoft games typically allow you to do that. This game, you cannot switch your aiming shoulder. And it's unfortunate because a lot of times, you'll want to be able to see what's on the other side. And it's just something that in a third-person shooter at this point is it's kind of lame if you don't have it, per se. because it's hard for you to, let's say you have to lean out of something that's, a left corner instead of a right corner. It's kind of hard because you have to completely expose yourself if you don't want to take cover on the object, like if you want to stay mobile and not pinned down. And basically, it'll be more of an annoyance than anything else. Something that's actually also pretty interesting is that you cannot drive while shooting in any capacity. That is just not something you can do at all. And you are completely reliant, even on a motorcycle you can't do it. You are completely reliant on either ramming someone with your car, using city hacks to your advantage, or basically using the environment. You cannot shoot at all while driving. Also, another big thing is that while you're out and about in the city of Chicago, you cannot repair any vehicles. So let's say you have a specific vehicle that you really want to keep, you cannot repair it. It just will never be fixed. You have to find a new one. Now, what I do like about this game is that you can summon a car basically wherever you are, as long as you're not in a mission, and as long as the last car that you summoned is not close, or if it's not destroyed or something like that. That's very helpful, especially when you're out and about trying to do various things. Also, another problem I kind of have with driving, I know a lot of the problems I'm having seem to revolve around driving, is that it's very hard to take out helicopters that are pursuing you while driving, just simply because they fly so high and you cannot rotate the camera high enough while driving in order to see them, unless you're on like a slope or if you're launching yourself off a ramp, in which case you probably can. But for the most part, you really have a difficult time trying to take out helicopters, which actually, I should have mentioned that, yes, Aiden can take out helicopters if he hacks into them and he has the proper skill. And that's a little bit unfortunate. The other thing that I really don't like about this game is the fact that there's no... in this game, you're limited to how far you can jump in parkour by only a contextual climb, or that is, you can only climb up items or objects in the overworld where the game wants you to. You cannot, for example, jump up rocks. You have to try and run up them, which is very awkward. And really, there's a lot of weird things that happen, because you can only contextually climb. For example, you might be swimming, and it might be hard for you to climb out of water because Aiden can only climb where the game tells him to and where it gives you the option. And additionally, it's a little bit hard to hide from swimming. I feel like they didn't take the lesson from Assassin's Creed 4 that lets you hide while swimming, but I mean, it's kind of weird, is what I'm saying. There are going to be a lot of times in this game where if you've played other free roam games, it kind of feels like other free roam games have hit this a little bit more on the mark, and it's very it hinders you a lot, the fact that you can't do a lot of this stuff. Unfortunately, I think Watch Dogs kind of feels less of a game, or it suffers a little bit because of this, because a lot of these things are kind of, I would say at this point, almost utility tools, especially being able to switch aiming shoulders and whatnot, and things of that nature. Now, what is the story of Watch Dogs? Because that's really the interesting meat. Well, the story of Watch Dogs is based off of a real-world event, the blackout of 2010. The blackout of 2003, which was an actual event that happened in the United States and I believe parts of Canada back in 2003. I actually, because I live in the Northeast United States, I actually experienced it. Basically, there was no power to the vast majority of the northern eastern seaboard and parts of Canada because of an electronic glitch, or a glitch in the system at a major power plant, and it basically set the whole grid offline. And in the Watch Dogs universe, it was actually caused by a hacker hacking into the system and causing 11 people to die and a whole bunch of chaos, and basically the blackout was not a very good thing for it to happen. And in this universe, at least in Chicago, a private company has been hired to completely design this overarching system called CTOS, which will monitor every aspect of the city. So, for example, sewage and power and infrastructure and traffic, and everything is all linked to this one massive system. Now, of course, problems begin when people suspect that this company is using this system to spy on their daily lives and look into them. And where you come in as Aiden Pierce is actually quite different. Aiden Pierce is actually a skilled hacker. Prior to the game's beginning, tragedy strikes after a job gone wrong, and it's basically up to him in order to figure out who did this and exact revenge. Now, I would like to say that the game did start off on a very interesting note. Obviously the story goes from there. The story develops, and you meet new characters, you meet a whole bunch of stuff. Lots of things happen that is atypical. Some of which is atypical, some of which falls along the usual rails of a story in these kinds of games. But I would like to say that I did like the beginning of the game. The beginning of the game, as more specifically the first 2.5 acts, were really interesting in my opinion. I was really hooked to them. And it was a lot of fun playing through this game. And definitely the first 2 acts, I would say, are the beginning. The beginning of the game, the first half was really well done. I think they did a great job of introducing Aiden, and in this wide open world where all these different things are happening, and he's basically playing a part in it from the shadows. Aiden is actually also known as the vigilante in this game because he runs around, basically issuing out street justice. Making sure crimes don't happen, and he uses the system to his advantage. And unfortunately, the game goes from there, and it kind of really, you could tell that it was like either they were compressing the story or they didn't want it to go very long. The story really doesn't develop too much. Now, when I say develop, I mean the story is actually very, very short. Now, you'll see my playthrough, and I have to admit something. I did accidentally delete about 4 hours of footage. Maybe about 2 hours of it was actual story time, and the rest were side quests, which kind of sucks. I know, it really does. And I feel horrible because I deleted it like an idiot. But basically, the story is very short. I was able to beat basically Act 4 and then the final act in about, only 3 hours? It was not that long. So the entire story is probably only about 6 or so hours if you don't do anything else. 6, I'd say maybe 8 just to be safe, maybe 9. But if you only cared about story, there are very few things that are not story missions that they mandatorily make you do. But the game tries to make up for its shortcomings in story with a lot of side content. And don't get me wrong, the side content is very interesting. For example, you can receive an alert from CTOS since you're hacked into it that you might want to go out and stop a crime from happening, and you have to stealth your way up to the crime, watch it happen, and then capture and take down the villain who has just committed this crime. The problem is a lot of times they get repetitive, but at least there's a bunch of interesting locales for it, which is what I could say really makes it different, because each time it's almost like a different stealthing experience. Because if you launch your attack too early, you'll spook him off. No crime has occurred, nothing has happened, and you won't get the credit for it. You'll fail it. Also, there's CTOS breaches, which is basically hack 5 different boxes in under a short amount of time, typically 3 to 5 minutes. I'm trying to think of the other ones. There's a bunch of collectibles you can run around and grab. There's privacy invasions, which is really, the social commentary version of the game, where you hack into other people's homes and you literally watch them act out scenes and whatnot. And some of them might be, internet-related things. They're jokes, puns on the various types of people there are in our society. Others are a little crazier. Yeah, it's kind of interesting where they go with that. And, there's criminal convoy missions. Basically, anything you've probably seen in a sandbox type of game. There's checkpoint races, but there's no actual racing against AI. It's more of reach X, go from point A to B with a certain vehicle, and you have so much time. There's a lot of different things that they do. Gang hideouts, which can either be done stealthily or, open combat. And I will say, I do like the stealth aspect of Watch Dogs. As Aiden, you don't have any non-lethal weapons besides your melee baton, which is something he pulls out. It's an instant takedown. However, you can buy a suppressed pistol, you can buy a suppressed assault rifle, and it feels like the side quests really do contribute, because after completing a certain amount of basically every side quest, you get, maybe a special car or an experience boost or a special weapon, most likely. For example, for completing the convoy missions, or at least 9 of the 18 convoy missions, you get a sniper rifle that's basically an anti-material rifle. In other words, it's a very powerful sniper rifle that will wreck any car coming your way and basically will one-shot any enemy in the game because it's such a high caliber. Now, the problem is that Watch Dogs really doesn't space out the amount of side content that it has. I think that that's mainly the biggest problem of it, is that there's too much side content and the story is way too short to really justify there being that much side content. Now, this game only has 5 acts, and about, I'd say, 39 missions, most of which can be completed very quickly, some of which are obviously a bit longer, but, you know, some of these missions are like 5-10 minute missions, and other ones are, you know, a bit longer. And that's what I mean, like, some of these, especially in the later parts of the game, some of these missions are just like, you know, run over, kill a guy, and if you killed him stealthily, you can just leave, and then that's the end of the mission. Or if you could snipe him from far away, these guys will never know, you just leave. You know, I really feel that, like, that's what I mean. Acts 1 and 2 really showed what the game was really about. So, for example, in Act 2, there was a mission. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you the story behind it or whatever. But basically, you had to, as Aiden, okay, because Aiden's the only playable character. As Aiden, you had to oversee, you basically had to tail a gangster. You had to tail a gangster who had info that you needed. You basically, he goes into this compound that's basically in the middle of, like, what do they call it? In the middle of the ghetto of Chicago. There's basically, it's almost like a military fort. Not really like a big one, but you could tell that they blockaded it off. It's only for their stuff. And instead of, you have 2 choices. You can either follow him personally or follow him with a camera. You know, jumping between camera to camera, because Aiden can jump between different electronics within range. So, for example, Aiden can hack into a camera, see what the camera's seeing, and then you have to follow him by jumping from camera to camera to camera. And then, during that same mission, you have to save a guy who's also trying to escape from this. Now, I failed it, but it's very interesting, the different types of things that they really try to do in this game. And that's what I mean. In Act 2, they pulled out all the stops, they did all this stuff. And around Act 3, I'll give a pass, because they did have a lot of stuff. It was a short act, you know, I completed it, again, in 2 hours. It was not that long, 6 missions. And Act 4 and 5 were just kind of really, really weird. And I mean, when I say weird, it's just that, you know, there wasn't as much substance. Like, a lot of the missions that were really in Acts 1 and 2 were kind of just gone. You know, it feels like they really tried to innovate for the first half of the game and then kind of dropped it. And I don't know what happened there, but it wasn't... It feels like they definitely feels like they compressed the ending. Like, they wanted to go another 2 or 3 acts to really flesh out the story, but they didn't, which is very weird, because it's like, why would they do that? It leaves the story feeling very compressed. You know, it feels like loose ends got tied up too quickly, you know. And basically, literally, they introduced the big villain of the game, you know, or well, not the, but one of the big villains of the game is introduced, and you basically kill him the same mission. It's like, you know, there's no, like, really anticipation, or there's no build up, is what I'm trying to say. It feels like that arc gets wrapped up so quickly, you know, and it doesn't really have time to develop. And I don't know, I just feel that the story definitely took a turn towards the end that was, you know, not for the better. And it's unfortunate, because I did spend a lot of time, you know, waiting for this game, and I think a lot of people did. Now, what I will say is, on the PS4, I'm split on the graphics, and I know that was a big point of contention of people who played this game. You know, everyone wanted to talk about the graphics, the graphics, the graphics. Now, I've always said that graphics do not define 100% of a game for me, obviously, but this game, I have to say that sometimes the graphics feel good when they basically want you to look at them. Like, it feels, for characters who are not generic, so for example, Aiden, his family, you know, the villains, the graphics look alright, you know, they look what I would come to expect from an early next-gen title. The problem is everyone else. Everyone else kind of looks like, and I've said this before, it looks like they stepped out of GTA 4. It looks like the normal average person did not have a lot of graphical time put into them. It feels like they didn't really spend a lot of time developing just the average randomly generated person. And to me, that's kind of, you know, if you're going to go the whole way, you know, you got to go the whole way. You know, if you're going to take this big step, you can't just say, oh, but it's only for the importance, and have everyone else looking like last gen. Especially for a title that has been delayed and delayed and delayed a third time for Wii U owners, which I know must have them upset. It's kind of embarrassing, I feel. I kind of feel like They could have done a much better job in that regard. Now, soundtrack for this game is great. I love it. It really feels like it was something fantastic. And in fact, I'll give you another example from a mission. There was another mission where I had to set up basically an ambush for a bunch of gangsters that were going to meet up. And I got there first. I basically had time to set up my explosive devices and whatnot. And by the way, Aiden can craft things, which is great. He can craft hackables, he can craft explosives, and that really helped out. This was the mission where they introduced it. I placed IEDs all over the place, where you can examine the area. There's tire tracks, you're supposed to place them there. There's valves that you can make explode, stunning people. You can explode transformers. This was a great mission, and during that mission, they played like a rap song, and it was just perfect. They played Wu-Tang Clan, actually, I should say. And it was funny as hell, because it fit right with the actual feeling of the mission. It's an ambush, and it was, I don't know, the song just really went with it. Not like the lyrics or anything really vibe with it, but it was just great the way that mission played out. And I really had a good taste in my mouth after playing that mission. I said that, wow, this was Act 2, by the way, which is what I'm saying. Act 2, and I guess I'll pass Act 3, I'll put it in there, because Act 3 does kind of wrap up the Act 2 3 storyline. Is that mission? If this mission is a harbinger of what's to come, then this game is going to be great, because it really fits in, the soundtrack. And unfortunately, as I already said, that really didn't happen. Those special missions sort of just disappeared in terms, in exchange for generic, regular missions, which is a shame. But don't get me wrong. Now, obviously, I have a lot of good things to say about Watch Dogs. I have a lot of bad things to say. But what I do want to say is that if you are looking for a sandbox, open world type of game with, I would say with an interesting twist on it, Watch Dogs is definitely probably right up your alley, especially with all the side content and all the storylines that happen in the side content and the way things get unlocked and everything is just great. And as I said, you will love the first half of the game if that's what you're into, especially if you want a game that has social commentary and stuff mixed in with it. It's not too far-fetched off the deep end. You'll probably love the first 2 acts, or the first 2-3 acts. After that, however, I'm going to say be ready for disappointment. And actually, it's sad because a lot of these games typically are boring towards the beginning. They're more generic. They all open up the same way. But this game kind of didn't do that. This game kind of opened up amazingly for the first half, in my opinion, and kind of got more generic towards the end, which is kind of weird. But definitely, Watch Dogs is at least worth a rent of anything, but I definitely recommend that you buy it if you're really looking forward to this type of thing, especially since it has multiplayer, which I haven't even discussed. There's various multiplayer modes revolving around hacking. You have online races, you have tailing, which is basically you're trying to hack into someone and you're just pretending to be someone in the crowd. I think I have the name right. Excuse me really quickly because I've been talking for a while. And basically, there's a lot of different game modes that you can play on, and unlocking and doing stuff in the multiplayer of the game actually affects the single player. You can unlock, for example, anti-vehicle rounds for the single player. You can unlock a whole bunch of other stuff, and loadouts for multiplayer and whatnot. And definitely, there's a lot of good stuff to work towards in this game. Definitely going for that 100% completion rate. The biggest problem I have with this game, okay, is that you cannot replay missions. And even worse than that, you can only have one save file from what I've seen. I don't think you can have multiple save files. So you're left in this very weird position. Like a lot of these games, and it's very weird that this game is made by Ubisoft and doesn't have this stuff, because Ubisoft makes Splinter Cell, Assassin's Creed, Ghost Recon. They make all these different titles and you can't replay missions. That is the weirdest thing I've heard from this game. I don't understand why they didn't put that in. That feels like something that would be mandatory of an Ubisoft game, or at least having multiple save files. Now, because you can't have multiple save files and you can't replay missions, basically, if you want to start over, you want to replay a mission that you really liked, like, as I just said, the mission where I laid the ambush was a great mission. I would have loved to replay it, on my free time because it was fun as hell, and then afterwards there's a chase and everything. You can't do it. And I don't know why they don't let you do that. Why don't they let you replay missions? You know, this is something that Assassin's Creed has been putting in since Brotherhood. You know, when they realize that people want to replay missions, and they put in optional bonus objectives, which are not in this game, bonus objectives, but still, why is there no ability to replay missions from what I've seen? I looked on the internet, there's no way to replay them. If you want to replay a mission, you got to delete your current save and start over. Why? So there's a lot of disappointment on this end, I feel, from this game, but at the same time, there's a lot of good stuff that it's really taken the sandbox genre on an interesting twist. I wouldn't say it's revolutionized it, but it's definitely taken it on a unique spin that can only really be found here. And all I have to say is, if they make a sequel to this game, or if they make another spiritual successor or whatever, I hope they fix a lot of these problems. You know, I hope they fix, you know, the fact that you can't jump and it's only contextual where you can parkour. I hope they fix the fact that the story feels, you know, half-baked, literally, and doesn't feel that great. Because I spent hours, I'm telling you. As I said, the main story is only about 10 hours max, I'd say. 10, maybe 12, you know, if you include travel time. I've spent double that on my playthrough, and I lost 4 hours of footage. So there's definitely a lot of cool stuff going on in this game. It's just at the same time, there's a lot of problems with this game, and it's unfortunate. So without having this review run too long, I will quickly open this up. Without having this review run too long, what do I think about Watch Dogs? I think that for a third-person shooter, it's a good game. For an open-world sandbox, it's a good game. But there are problems with this game, and that's unfortunate, because it's very hard for me to, you know, decisively sit down and look at this game and say that, you know, it was a great, perfect experience, which I obviously can't say. You know, in fact, I really can't even say that it was a well-rounded experience, because unfortunately, you know, that second half was not that great. I mean, it was fun playing and all, but it was not what the first half of the game had led me to expect. So it's definitely something you should probably look into. Definitely rent, maybe definitely buy if you really want to, you know, just get it over with and own it, because there definitely is a lot of stuff worth replaying. But the problem is, if you want to replay, you got to delete your stuff, and it's unfortunate. Thankfully, it's not like there's any missables or anything in the missions, you know what I mean, that I'm aware of at least. But it feels like most of the stuff you can get is post-game, you know, you can get it. And but it just feels like this brand needs more polish is the problem. It needs more polish, and it definitely needs to be more well-rounded and, you know, definitely fixed if they intend to release a sequel. So hopefully this is just their version of, you know, a new IP. They didn't know what to expect from it, and now, you know, next game they're going to fix, we're going to well-round it out, because they can only really improve from here, I feel, in terms of the gameplay. So what am I going to give this game? What am I going to give Watch Dogs? I am going to give Watch Dogs an 85 out of 100. It definitely has a lot of good things to it. It definitely has a lot of negatives. And you have to be mindful of that when you actually do buy the game. Now, what the heck did I just do? I have no clue. Now, there are a lot of good things about this game. Like, as I said, you know, definitely the experience, the open world, the fact that, you know, you can use hacking to really screw around with stuff. You can complete some missions without even firing a bullet, you know, without even putting yourself in danger if you do things right. Or you could choose to go guns blazing, which, again, great stuff. But, I mean, what if you want to see both outcomes? You know, what if you want to replay a lot of this stuff? You really can't. I think that that's probably one of the biggest things, in addition to some of the other faults I mentioned. So I wouldn't say good job, Ubisoft. I'd say this is all right. You know, this is something, again, 85 is like average, I'd say. You know, it's half and half. You know, there's a lot of good stuff, there's a lot of bad stuff. And obviously, when I say half and half, I don't mean like, no, it's not 50 out of 100. Like, I'm not just giving it points for being a game. I'm saying they put in a good effort, and it's a little flawed, a little rough around the edges, but it's still a good effort, and I can respect that. And hopefully for the next one, you know, they really take care of business. They definitely at least improve it, and I'm waiting to see what they do next. So, thanks for watching. Again, I apologize for losing 4 hours of footage. I'm an idiot, and I'll see you guys next time.